Hey, so first of all, thank you everyone for turning up to my Elements and Ceremonial Magic talk. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I know I have a tendency to mumble and my voice is quite deep, so I have to pitch it up like this, like I do. Okay, so how many of you are familiar with Elemental Dignities as a way of reading tarot? Have you encountered it before? So the veterans. Okay, for those of you who don't know, and I don't think many people do, Elemental Dignities was a system to read cards invented by the Golden Dawn, who is sort of the grandfather, an out-of-fashion grandfather, of modern magic. Their kind of motto is the method of science with the aim of religion. And the problem with that is that when you have something like tarot, which is an intuitive tool, it's so subjective. It's hard to sort of force it into a scientific model. So what they did was they invented this system to sort of read tarot logically rather than intuitively. So you can say it's a scientific way of reading a tarot. It's because if you look at the handout, it's fire weakens water. Fire and air, it makes each other stronger. It's sort of like maths, little abstract arithmetic almost. And the reason why they did that is when you want to have consistent results, you need to have a sort of standardization of any system. I'll give an example. Say, for example, you're trying to interpret your dream, and you in your dream you see an eagle flying overhead, but that can mean so many things to different people. It can represent your hopes and dreams, or it can be looming danger that's hovering over you and just about to kill you at any second. So what they try and do was they try and define every symbol very clearly, so that. For them, divination in general it's treated as a sort of language that's universal, and when you have a language, the means have to mean the same. The words have to mean the same thing to different people, and so they sort of created like a dictionary of what symbols mean, and this sort of relates to the tarot in that they also created a systematic method to read the cards, and so. I'm going to go a little bit into the sort of pros and cons of the system now that we've gone through the background. Because it relies on logic, it's quite good for beginners who aren't very good with intuition. This is the system I started out learning tarot with. It is effective to get reliable results quite quickly. The problems. One slight problem is that when you start to get good intuitively, trying to analyze cards logically fucks that up, basically. You look too deeply into the cards when if you just tell your brain to shut up and go by gut feeling, and you can get your meanings that way. So there's a sort of balance whether you go for logically or intuitive. Going things logically can disrupt the intuitive side. So once you treat this as sort of training wheels before your intuitive muscles have developed in a sense, or else it'll trip you up, and you wouldn't go as far as you normally would. Even the person who taught me this system, he was like, "Yeah, I don't really use this anymore." And I found it myself. I naturally gravitated away from it, but it is. Really, it's good to have this to fall back on. Sometimes your intuition just fails you. You stare at some cards, it's just blank. Your brain's like, and then that's when you maybe I'll fall back on doing this logically. Maybe I can make some sense out of it. And it does work. It gives you a bit of objectivity to readings. I've used this system. I sometimes go online to Tarot Forum, Eclectic, because they have your reading section where people post their readings and people can chip in. I found that I can use this system, look at their cards, and still come up with something that makes sense rather than, I don't know, the slight problem with intuition is that you can, it gives you a lot of freedom, but also a lot of freedom to go wrong. Not, you know, and it's like sometimes you say, Jen, pick a card.
Judgment.
Judgment. Like some people can interpret that literally and say, you know, you have to make decisions or whatever. But and then when I hear that, I was like, what are you talking about? I know, but say if judgment came up with the 10 of Cups, so it'd be fire and water that cancels each other out. So you can say, okay, you're having too much fun, so that you're not doing much. Okay, less fun, more work. So you see how this system kind of gives you...
Way.
Yeah, you can see how this system kind of gives you a method to read it, even if your intuition sucks completely, like mine did 2 years ago. Thanks, Jen. So how are we doing for time? Oh my god, that was quick. Another kind of problem with it for experienced readers is that it's hard to use your industry standard spreads to read with, because you always have to read cards in either 2s or 3s or in groups. You can't read them as just a one-off. So you have to really tailor-make your spreads to accommodate this system. So if you're used to using, say, a Celtic Cross, it might be a bit problematic. Some ways to get around that, I think, I think Mary Kay Greer did this system. Basically, you just think of the elements of the entire thing, and then you sort of do the elemental dignities of the entire reading, as opposed to 1 or 2 cards. And also another method is, rather than having 2 cards put together, you have each position represents an element, and then when you put the card on the position, it's like, okay, this doesn't like being here, or this is thriving here, something like that. I was thinking if might be best to actually have me give a demonstration, if that would be.
Yeah, actually yes, because I'm getting confused.
Okay, okay.
Can I just ask a question? Just because I know that it does come up a lot with elemental dignities whenever you work with elements anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about the minor arcana at all.
Okay.
But in terms of the major arcana, it's very easy to give elements to zodiac cards.
Yes.
But
planets are harder.
Planets are harder. So what do you
there's
use?
There's no bog standard thing, which I've actually written down on the handout. Each person does it differently.
Mm-hmm.
What I personally do is I use the planets as the element of spirit.
Okay.
Because if you for those of you who know astrology, each planet usually rules over 2 signs of opposite elements. And so you can see how it kind of reconciles 2 elements, like the way spirit does. Spirit acts like a kind of magical glue that. So if, say, fire and water don't normally mix together, but if there's a spirit card involved, then it managed to harmonize the 2 and balance things out. So that's how I personally read it, and that's how I've been taught.
I like that.
Not everyone does it that way.
So the spirit card would be, for example, if you bring the astrology thing, like Venus, who is ruling
Taurus and Libra. Yeah, and Taurus is Earth, Libra is air.
So I can go on with Tauruses, but not with Virgos and Capricorns. Okay.
A bit more complicated now. We'll see. Yeah.
Sorry.
Go on.
I'm going to maybe a little bit behind the curve here. So you're saying
I might have gone a bit too far ahead.
the major arcana.
Yes.
There is a set of correspondences between the signs of the zodiac and the planets.
The Golden Dawn does do it that way. Other people have their own ones, but because I'm a ceremonial magician, I do it that way.
Okay.
You do find people online. You do a search. Some people, like I think, because I speak a lot with Anton about this sort of stuff, and it's interesting how even though these things are set, and she uses pure intuition, she gets it right 70% of the time.
70?
Yeah. No, but
it's a way to remember what that correspondence is.
You have to just do it, learn it.
Do you want to show the planetary cards and then?
The correspondence.
They're in the handout.
They're in the handout.
Well, no, I mean no. This is
Stop interfering with
in the handout. I listed out every major arcana and what would their sort of element be. So I included the planets simply because I don't know. Say for example Mars, which is the Tower card.
Yeah.
I mean, even though it rules Scorpio, it's still fiery in nature. So you can put elements on the.
Yeah.
But it's entirely up to you. I wouldn't recommend beginners to the system to use Spirit. I didn't because it was too complicated. And then I think I was only a year in before I started to use Spirit. Yes. Well, think of Spirit as sort of like a Joker card that does everything.
Okay. And which of the which of these major cards then?
So the plan, I think I think it's better to just look online rather than have me list everything here.
But those are the correspondences that I know of as well, the one you put on the handouts anyway, pretty much, the most followed ones, but people do stray
away a lot. Like for example, I think you went with Hanged Man as Scorpio.
Yes, I did.
Sort of makes, well technically in the Golden it's Death. But
that is Scorpio.
Scorpio, yeah. But Hanged Man still sort of works because it's the element of water itself. So yeah, it works. So even when you're wrong, you're not far off.
I'm never wrong. Sorry, I'm joking.
Well, no, but a lot of people don't like having these set correspondences. But then again, it's made by people who have developed their developed their intuition really well, and they just. I don't know, they scry, they meditate, and they just jot them down for people like me who have no experience with any of this stuff until recently.
So actually the Golden Dawn has assigned the elements to the
yes,
major.
Yes. Well,
has Alistair
technically no. Technically no, but because they have the zodiacal attributions, they kind of go with them. Okay. The problem is, it's not much written because they're a secret order. They have the final instructions, but they don't have how they made everything. So a lot of what I say is actually my opinion, but we'll
that's fine.
Go with
that's
that for now.
No, it's fine, Henry. I don't have a challenge. I was just wondering because in the Golden Dawn there was so much contradiction within the order that.
Really? Give me an example.
Well, Alistair he was thrown out.
Oh no, but that's just infighting. That wasn't necessarily over the principles, it was just how the organization was run.
Okay.
Because if you look at the, say for example, they have orders in France and Germany.
Yeah.
They were a lot more organized and talented than we were here in Britain.
Okay.
Because the head, they accepted, I don't know, people went up the ranks based on donations, not on, the knowledge. So, that's why Alistair Crowley was just so pissed off. It's like, no, I'm starting my own thing to do it right, basically.
Because I always had the impression they were also struggling within each other,
yes,
who has the right opinion, and not only about the structure, but...
Yes, but that's all history, and we probably shouldn't go too deeply into it today.
Can you actually balance the two? Like you were saying, if your intuition fails you or you're having just a crap day and...
Yeah. I'd say I'd recommend using both. But it's just easier when you're beginning to first use your logic because that's what you're used to. And then what I found in my tarot career is after using this for a while, my intuition developed from that, and then I sort of slowly stopped using it. But that's give it a try and see what happens. So,
I've done it, but you said you couldn't do. I mean, I've done it when I've done my card of the day. One card that some cards are more difficult than others.
Yeah.
I mean, you get some cards and you go, no, this is not what I got in my diary today. It doesn't make any sense, Like you've got a day, for example, of planned workshops, fun day, whatever, and you get the 9 of Swords.
Well, that's because you're stressing yourself out. maybe.
No, you're happy. Go,
Okay.
by the presumption that you wake up thinking, great, I've got a workshop, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Busy day, but you know, fine, looking forward to it. And then you get the Nine of Swords, so you go, okay.
No, it's
just saying.
We all have off days.
Perhaps you get those logical, makes more sense when you get.
But sometimes, which I've been finding recently, is that you read too deeply into it, and then you see so many options, and then it's hard to pick the one that sort of makes sense in a way. And this is especially troublesome when you're emotionally vested in the reading. You want a certain outcome.
Yeah.
Whilst intuition, which has a tendency to fuck up as well, but in a different way. So definitely, I would say try both and see what's more reliable for you. I mean, and it also changes over time, depending on what improves.
Well, also it depends from your, like everything is mutable and changeable. So.
Shall I actually go through the system? Because
yes,
not everyone is actually familiar with it. So in the Golden Dawn, Wands is fire, Cups is water, Swords is air, and Earth is pentacles. The slight problem is that in Wicca, some people use, swords as fire.
As fire.
Okay? And
Wands as
you can experiment with that. That's up to you. I think it's fine as long as you use the same thing consistently. Or maybe you use the same consistent for that deck that you're working with. And then you have the majors, which I've outlined here, what the elements are. And then on the first page, we look at the actual relationships between the elements. So fire and water cancel each other out. Water puts out fire. Fire boils water into steam. Air and earth, that's a less intuitive one. Well, think of earth as a solid rock, whilst air is as a sword, and you're trying to cut it open. Sometimes the earth is too hard for that sword to cut open. Sometimes it's soft enough for it to do so. So that's sort of how that works. It's kind of like spiritual rock, paper, scissors, kind of. And then the fire and air strengthen each other because fire needs oxygen. Water and earth strengthen each other because if you put water into earth, you grow stuff on it. Fire and earth fuels fire. So air and water. I'm personally not sure about that one.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't.
But this is how it technically works. It's for those of you who know, air is sort of the logic, the mind. Water is our emotions. So that's why I'm a bit iffy about that one. But
well, air and the sea, I mean, they work very well together.
Yeah, but they can bring up water spouts and storms and all sorts. So
I think you have to look at it as, like you do say in the handout, it's strengthening and weakening. It's not positive and negative.
Yes.
So, I mean, if you think about psychology and a lot of techniques like CBT, for instance, recognising thoughts as thoughts and not letting that influence emotions, and using that in a mutual way. It's not as good as having a really good energetic day for your emotions and going wee, that thinking that you're really fired up and doing lots of stuff, or it's not as good as staying in bed all day and having a really earthy day that makes you feel better, but it's still something that is positive and moving forward.
And on the note of psychology, I can actually use this as an example. Because this system looks at the relationships between different cards, it's really good for relationship readings. Say if you do a relationship reading and 2 court cards come up, let's say Prince of Cups with, let's make this a gay couple, Knight of Swords. So, one guy, he's really fast, really mentally just very curious about everything. The other is, a lot more emotionally guarded and controlled, and there's that little bit of friction, but at the same time might sort of work out because they're both mental, not crazy, but intellectual at the same time. Okay, someone give me another example of two court cards that you actually want to know about.
Queen of Wands and King of Swords.
Queen of Wands and King of Swords. Okay. This. Yeah, really ambitious woman, very career-driven, but also still sort of chilled and relaxed about it. But hers is sort of really persistent over time action rather than explosive. Let's go get him sort of thing, like a knight is. Was a King of Swords.
King of Swords.
Whilst this bloke, his mind is just everywhere. He just sits down and thinks. He doesn't do anything. So you have an action person with a thinking person. So that goes well together.
But it's air and fire again. So
they go well.
Fire and air, they go well somehow.
Yeah.
They might fight.
But you can see how this system kind of works.
How about Murray and Djokovic?
Oh, nice one. I don't understand. Do you know the astrology?
Do you know their when's their birthdays?
Not enough. Just the temperaments.
I actually.
Give me two cards and what you
The
think.
internet knows everything. So.
No, someone posted about it earlier. A friend of mine about the astrological correlation of Murray and. I don't know if I can find
Murray is a Knight of Swords, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know anything about Djokovic, so I couldn't.
He's a bit more earthy than Murray, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's probably
But
in that.
Murray's blooming grumpy most of the time, so he's definitely
he
swords.
can lose the plot.
Well, but you guys see how this system kind of works now that I've used examples.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the distinction between strengthening each other and being friendly?
Strengthening is that they actively amplify each other's effects.
Right. Yeah.
Whilst when they're friendly, they're supporting, but they don't necessarily. Like I'll give, for example, earth, fire, and earth.
Yeah.
Like putting more wood into a fire doesn't necessarily make the flame bigger, but it lasts longer.
Yeah.
So there's a support in that sense.
Yeah.
Whilst if you blow air into fire, it just explodes.
And
Kind
is
of.
there a complementary unfriendliness between elements?
I would argue that for air and water. But again, it is still a bit of subjective interpretation in it.
Yeah.
Everyone
Fire
can.
and water, I think. Fire and water also unfriendly. I mean, water is fresh.
Yeah, water wants to be calm and chill and have fun. Fire is just like, yeah, let's, beat up some people.
Fire is the most active.
Yeah. That do you really think water feels happy being boiled all the time?
And two of the same element, they are friendly.
They actually strengthen each other more than, say, fire and fire is stronger than fire and air. But the thing is, when there's two of the same elements, they might be too much. While say if it's friendly of a different element, they support each other in a more balanced way. And we see this in readings when you say you have a Celtic cross, you have too much water, and you just think, oh, you're just being too chill. You're not doing anything with your life. Basically, it's sort of like that. Or you're having fun, too much fun with your girlfriend. You're not working enough hours at work. I think we all more or less do it to a certain degree in our normal routine because we do think of elements to a certain amount. It's just this is more of a conscious effort to do so, more than anything else.
How do you apply the imbalances in a normal reading? I know there is a method.
What do you mean apply the imbalances?
Well, you're doing a reading for someone, whatever spread you're using,
okay.
And you find, like you just said, for example, overwhelming presence of water or whatever. How do you actually...
As a sort of... It sets the context as a sort of background information, but then when you go into the details, then you just read it as such.
But then you keep in mind that the water is the main.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's just about wraps up on my talk. Jane and I have made a quiz to sort of. It's a good quiz to actually teach you how to use the system. Although we did it in reverse for the ease of being a quiz. So basically, what we did is we gave for every question we give like a picture, a quote, a phrase, or whatever, and then you make up the mind to say what elements make up this thing. In a reading, you actually do the reverse. You see the elements and then you try to put them together and see what happens.
Now there are right answers to that. So.
Yes, there are right answers to this. That's the beauty of logic. But yes, thank you very much, guys. Are there any more questions?
Any questions?
We're clear, we're not confused. That's all good.
Why are they called dignities?
I'm actually not too sure. I think it's made mostly to do with the fact that it's 20th century English, so the use of words a bit more dignified than us. I think dignity is like the disposition of the cards.
Just means quality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, quality, that's a better word. Great. Yep.
When you lay a card,
Yeah.
is it dignified and reversed?
With element, that's another good point. With elemental dignities, you read everything upright.
Yeah.
You don't use reversals at all. Or it's actually a sort of when something is ill dignified. So when say air and earth are together, so then you say these cards are it's sort of the same as being reversed. If that makes sense. Like these are weak.
So I'm suggesting that they're called dignified because you use all the.
Yeah. But it's basically the way of reversing cards. If you're used to reversing cards, which I'm not. Okay. Anything else?
Don't you ever think about specific people or icons like the Mario Djokovic hearing that I mentioned?
Other specific people.
I always do that when I'm reading it.
The thing is, I can do people I know, but it has to be like someone that's famous, which I don't keep up. I don't keep up with popular culture. I'm not interested in that.
I just had a flash of the Clintons and their relationship because they're.
What cards would you say they are? Then you have to give me some. Actually, well, why don't we do can we separate the core cards? No, I'll do a quick reading. Clintons.
There's the very charismatic, triathic.
But the thing is, that's how we perceive them, not necessarily who they really are. And that's the sort of trouble with just coming up with a card rather than having the cards choose themselves. We might interpret them wrongly, whilst the cards are arguably more reliable.
No one can ever know anybody else fully, let alone famous people, but there are certain representations. That's why I said iconography.
Okay. The actual archetypes of that particular person.
Okay, let's do Bill and Hillary Clinton.
You see, I would think Hillary Clinton would be Queen of Wands.
Yeah, after that.
And I think
I was thinking
Clinton would be.
funny enough.
Let's let the cards do it. That's Jane. Jane, there. Right, Bill Clinton. Let's go for Bill Clinton.
Let's see if it's got to be a queen.
He's a fool.
He's a king of cups. He's a king of cups.
I'm the King of Cups.
Okay. Okay, here's Hillary. Let's do that. Page of Cups.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting. Okay, so they're both. Okay. So let's. So is Bill. Is Hillary. So they're both quite emotional people, but in very different ways. So, using elemental dignities, we'll say their emotional natures amplify each other a lot, but it can be a bit unbalanced in that sense. So there's no earth to sort of introduce a bit of practicality to it. It's all they're quite flighty. They'll just do. I don't know. I mean, from what I know about them, they both are very quite distant from each other. I mean, they're rarely together in the same house. They're always like, well, one's off in another country sorting out, you know, diplomacy or whatever. So they're rarely together. I think that the movability of water kind of reflects that. But I think Bill is a lot more guarded and controlled about his emotions. He doesn't really like showing it, but when he is close to someone, he sort of pours it out on people. Whilst Hillary is kind of more idealistic, whilst Bill is a bit jaded. So I think it's an interesting one. I think the sort of chemistry between them is that Hillary gives the sort of more hope in the sort of idealism, the emotional part within Bill, even though he's himself is a bit sort of, the world is a dump. They're all very quite negative. But Hillary is sort of his light in the fact that he keeps an element of positivity in life. So yeah, does that, even though it's two waters, I don't think it really.
I don't think it's right.
Okay, I'm just reading like through the cards.
Would you read, I mean, this is from somewhere else, but would you, the painters also earth or water, aren't they? Does that come into it as well, or is this just confusing?
It sort of does, but no, but if you look at the cards on their own, you just think of them as a suit, but it affects their meanings, but not their suit, if that makes sense. So you still read them as two waters, but she has that little earthiness to her. She has that airy flavour to him. So it's a little bit of sprinkles on top. It's not the main dish.
Are you sure you picked the right card for the right person? It's not vice versa. Then it's just my personal opinion. I always perceived him more relaxed, more earthy, more
two
enjoying
waters.
life.
I agree. Actually. But then that could be where they are now, for example, because we just pulled the card out. So
their roles are sort of switched in their religion, haven't they?
We're thinking of them for what we know, again, perception, and so what you drew now is where they are now, and they might be. You might draw these 2 months down the line and get something totally different.
To be fair, I would say the King of Cups would make sense for Bill because he's been president, so he must have had a lot of shit happen to him. And it's easy to be very negative after being a leader. And I can kind of see the Hillary being a lot more optimistic about the world, and I think she does a lot of charity work and that kind of thing.
Like she looks like a celebrity, and she has that kind of celebrity status for a lot of people, especially as a female politician. And I think that for me works with the Page of Cups, who's a bit like the pop star a little bit. Yeah. So that works a little bit, but there's not the intellectual. There's no air in that pairing at all. Whereas I would have thought that they would be.
Inspiration who's jumping out. Also a little bit.
It's the love of power and influence, the need to influence, I think unites them. I don't think it's a particularly well-starred marriage, but in a coupling of people of influence and ambition, I think it's...
it works somehow.
Yes, it does. I mean, like...
But I see him as the magician.
Well, we were doing court cards. Court cards? Court cards, yeah. Don't know what it is about my voice today. As the magician.
Oh, absolutely. He's very adept.
And he likes to play, and he likes to play around. Yeah. But I think that shows most guys, frankly. So.
Shall we put your voice, not just your voice, it's my voice as well. Okay, shall I proceed with the
quiz? Okay. I'm assuming there's no more questions. If I'm wrong, do say so. Okay.
The quiz is. Sorry.
Will we have to
well,
I've got the quiz.
Thank you very much, you guys.
Thank you.